was born on a farm in northeastern North Carolina. I'm about 58 miles inland from the Atlantic Ocean and about 30 miles from the Virginia state line, right up tucked up in the northeast corner there. I know you'll have to get out your map and look at it. But just to tell you, my hometown is Edenton. One man from that small little town signed the Declaration of Independence. One man signed the Constitution. One of the first Supreme Court justices in the United States of America was from that town. The first political activism by women in the United States of America was in that town. If you know your North Carolina history, you can verify that. You had to look it up. So I tell you that to tell you I come from a long line of activism back on the coast. Edenton was the colonial capital of the colony known as North Carolina, before Newbern, before Raleigh. So if you ever get to Raleigh and you want to get to the seat of government, the heartbeat of government for the state of North Carolina, all you have to do is get on Edenton Street. That goes right by the legislature, 1 block away. It goes right up by the Capitol, and everything else is all around Edenton Street. I was taught that as a little boy. Anytime you get to Raleigh, get on Edenton Street, you can find anything of state government. I am the county commission chairman in my home county. I've been that for 4 years, first Republican in the history of that county. So I told you that history to tell you how far that goes back. There are 2 Republicans on the board now, 5 Democrats in a Democratic-controlled county. And I've been the chairman 4 years, and the other Republican is the vice chairman. That shows you how slick and smart Democrats are. They selected the 2 Republicans as chairman and vice chairman. Why? So if it didn't go right, they'd have somebody to blame it on, right? They'd be the 2 Republicans. But I came up here tonight to meet y'all and talk to you and also say thank you, because I wouldn't be standing here in front of you as a farm boy from eastern North Carolina if the grassroots effort of the people of this state was not strong enough. I won the primary, and I won it pretty smartly, I believe, by about 50,000 votes. I am in a runoff for Mr. Gardner. But the grassroots people, like yourself, y'all did it. I appreciate your vote, not just for me, I appreciate you voting. 27 years of my life, I raised my hand to my God and said I would die for the Constitution of the United States. I do not take that lightly. So I do not take voting lightly. So I tell you, do not take voting lightly. Make sure whoever gets your vote, that you have qualified that candidate. That candidate's got the experience, and that candidate should earn your vote. Otherwise, that's a frivolous vote, and do not waste your vote. Better men than me have paid a bigger price, and better women than I would ever be a patriot have paid a big price to allow you to have that opportunity to vote. I've watched people in foreign countries with Marines standing on each side of a long line of people who were voting for the first time in their life, and U.S. Marines with big guns were standing there to protect them from being killed by their fellow citizens in that country because they wanted to vote. And you know who the first people who voted in that country were? Women. They were lined up. Men slowly came later, but the women were lined up. And in that country, you know, women were not treated, they're treated like a piece of property. So the guys think they could just kill them, and U.S. Marines protected them so they could vote. Now, that's something that will stick in your mind and stay in your mind forever. You know, I got drafted during the Vietnam era, and the United States government put me in a nuclear missile program, and I worked on intercontinental ballistic missiles while I was in the service. A lot of people said, well, you went to Vietnam? No, I didn't. I've never said I went to Vietnam. I got drafted during Vietnam, but I didn't go. I qualified for the nuclear missile program, and that kept me out of the jungle, and we did not use nuclear weapons in Vietnam, even though I heard my daddy say for a long time neither one of his boys would have to go if they would just drop something on him. But he was a World War II veteran, so he thought wars were supposed to be won. And he thought wars were supposed to be won very quickly. You know, that's where my patriotism comes from, and that's where my conservative values come from. But when I left there, I went to East Carolina and went to school there and had a good time, and I got drafted. That's how I got drafted. I was having too good a time in college as a 19-year-old boy. So I went to service, did my time, came back, got my head on straight. But when I got drafted, I did not have the right to vote. I was 19 years old, I could not vote. I could be sent to a foreign country to die for my country, but I could not vote. In less than 4 months, the young people of the United States of America got that Constitution changed and gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
My daddy said, son, I know you go protest, you go do this and give speeches, and I did. He said, do 2 things for me. Do not get arrested, and do not participate in burning the United States flag. Well, I never got arrested, never burned the flag, but I did give speeches and pass petitions around. And that was a worthy cause. That was a worthy cause. After I went back to East Carolina, after I got my head on straight, after I got out of service, and after I graduated, Uncle Sam hired me as a special agent with NCIS. And I did that for 23 years. Nuclear Weapons Treaty Inspector, you see the parallel here? I was a young, wild man, and then I used my head. Uncle Sam got me in the military, put me in the nuclear weapons program. Then I went back to college, got my head on straight, did good, and then they recruited me as a special agent NCIS. And then I spent 5 years in the Soviet Union as a nuclear weapons treaty inspector. See how that puzzle puts together? Mankind cannot put a puzzle together like that. Only God can do that. Only God can do that. And I believe it did. I worked a lot of other places all over the world, lived all over the United States. Enjoyed my travel, enjoyed the experiences tremendously. I lived outside Hiroshima, Japan for 5 years. I brought 2 souvenirs back from Japan with me. One of them is 19 today, and the other one is 18. Before I left, we were on vacation with the whole family, and my daddy, a World War II veteran, fought in Okinawa and the islands in the Pacific. And he said, son, if you get over there and you get a chance to adopt a little Japanese boy or girl, I think that would be fine. And my whole big family turned and looked. Nobody said anything, just looked around like this. And Daddy said, what, it would be all right. I said, okay. So I got over there, and I was over there about 2 weeks, and I got an opportunity. My wife and I had it all planned. First Christmas was in Hong Kong. You know, New Year's would be in Sydney, Australia, because I'd always seen on TV. We had it all planned out for 5 years. I had it all planned out. We never went to those things. We got those boys, and we were happy just to do what we did, you know. So one of them's at the 19-year-old is a sophomore at Carolina, and the other one's a senior in high school. But it's been a good life. When I retired and came home, I found out something was wrong with my county as I was building my house. I was telling Nick, as I was building my house, I asked to see the budget and asked to see the land utilization plan for the county, and they wouldn't let me see it. I thought that was public information. I told them so. And that kind of raised a red flag. Something was wrong with my county, so I started digging and looking. I decided to run for county commissioner in the year of Obama against a minority female. I ran for county commissioner. And I won 70% of the vote to 30% of the vote in a Democratic-controlled county. And I've been the chairman of the county commissioners ever since then. I'm giving up my seat. My term expires in December of this year, so I'm running for Secretary of State because I still have some fight left in me. I farmed 625 acres with my brother. That's I'm a 5th generation farmer. That's what my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, as far as I can remember, that's what we always did. I love it with a passion. I talked to my brother. I said, I do not want to run for statewide office if it will cause our family farming operation to stop. So he said, why are you asking me? I said, I want to know your opinion. You're my business partner. He said, well, let me see. You risk your life for your country. You put your name and reputation on the line, sir, to be a county commissioner. He said, when you go do something for your state, go do the same thing for your state. I got the farm. And I still didn't want to do it. I didn't start till, what was it, Richard, about 2.5 months before the primary, 3 months before the primary. Richard Blackwood, about his campaign manager. So my brother said, what would your daddy say? My daddy died 3 years ago, and then that was the key. When my brother looked at me with tears in his eyes, said, what would your daddy tell you to do? That was it. So I enjoy it. I think I can improve the business climate in this state. I think I have the experience. I've owned 2 businesses. I started from scratch and sold them. And they are still going on today, doing very well. I know something about business. The #1 industry in this state is agriculture. Did you know that? #2 business is military. #3 business is tourism. Everybody in here has been a tourist. Not everybody in here has been in the military. Not everybody in here has been a farmer. Well, I have been all 3. So I do think I have that experience. I think I'm electable. I think it's been proven one time before since I won the primary. So thank you for your support before. Keep that grassroots effort going. That's why I'm willing to drive as far as I am, because I know somebody out there is working probably harder than I am. And that's how I get here. So I thank you for your support, and I ask you to continue it that way. Not just one more time, 2 more times. We get through the primary, then we can get to November and take Ms. Elaine Marshall out so we can really change the business climate in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just so you know, I hope everybody in here has gone up, has looked at the newsletter and on our website. Ed Goodwin and Ken Gardner, their interviews, their iCaucus interviews are up. You go and you watch those interviews, and Thursday, the caucus period ends midnight Wednesday. You can go up there, there'll be a ballot, and you can vote, but you can't do that unless you go up there and participate. All right? That's the whole idea, is to get citizens engaged. We're not going to go blindly down the road and vote for anybody. So please do that. John Tedesco's interview is tomorrow night. He's running for superintendent of instruction, so his interview probably will be up by, Friday, and then we'll have a 4-day, we'll have a caucus period and then a voting period. But on that note, one of the things we're going to do is we're running out of time, and other than the Secretary of State position, there's no way we're going to get all these candidates who decided to come and find us through the iCaucus process. It's not going to work. So iCaucus is working on some sort of an alternative for us, where we can go up and have a strong endorsement of the candidates. But again, it should not affect the Secretary of State. So we will keep you informed on that. Those of you who are new and never been here before, our mission statement. Our purpose in forming the Asheville Tea Party is to provide an organizational foundation for the execution of projects that advance our core values, and those being specifically the promotion and preservation of individual rights, constitutionally limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free markets. We became a second organization because we figured out education is great, but unless we have candidates to back, it's just not going to work. So we became a PAC, and so we are 2 organizations. And our purpose in forming that Asheville Tea PAC was to legally enable us to give our support and promotion of those candidates for political office who best advance the core values of the Asheville Tea Party. And then when I was asked to step up to this position that I didn't want, and I didn't, it took me 2 weeks dragging me to this, I said, well, they said, anything you want, we'll do. And I said, the only thing we need to do, because we took such a beating in 2010, that I said, we need to partner with iCaucus. I found out about them, saw what they were like. They were a national organization. I said, we need to do this. And we did it because their principles and mission align with ours. They're a national, nonpartisan organization. They're not a third party. Their mission is to increase the effectiveness of the United States voters in utilizing their proper constitutional role in the management of their own government. First, through comprehensive education, and secondly, through participation in the candidate identification and election process to ensure principled representation based upon fiscal responsibility through adherence to constitutional limitations of the government. And their principles, once again, are exactly what ours are. So that's who we are, that's what we've done, and we're very proud of that. We have some board members here. Linda Hawk is on our Asheville Tea Party board, and Jerry Lemons is here, and Fremont Brown is our vice chair. He's also the webmaster, so when things don't go up on the website, please blame him.
No, credit.
No, seriously, I don't know what we do with that, Fremont. Okay. We have some really good news before I get to event announcements. And I don't know if you heard today, but Betty Jackson, who is our Voters on Watch person in Buncombe County, she's the tip of the sword when it comes to forced annexation. She sent an email today, and people who live in unincorporated areas will be able to vote to halt forced annexation. Bev Perdue had 10 days to sign the thing. Her 10 days are up as of yesterday. It's been 10 days since the North Carolina House passed the new annexation reform law, and today's the deadline for the governor to sign it. And it's in the Mountain Express. You can get it on the Asheville Citizen Times. It's a big article in there. Of course, the lobbyists in the North Carolina League of Municipalities and their cronies in government are whining as usual. But imagine that, whining about people having a vote. Democracy gonna arrive. Anyone? So thank you to everyone who made phone calls, emails, went up to Raleigh. Thank you, thank you. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting is that how many of you have heard the story about what happened in San Diego? They passed the pension reform and they passed the union contract reform. Well, that was in San Diego, and guess who's in San Diego? Dara Bailey, who is our iCaucus National Vetting Director, is in San Diego, and she's got an iCaucus group, and she's got the San Diego Tea Party and a whole bunch of other groups down there. And they worked stealthily behind the scenes to get this done. So we were very proud of what they did. So that was wonderful. Our affiliate groups are growing. We went from us being number 1 to 5 to 8 to 10 to 12, and we got 5 more this week. So the goal is that if we can get all the grassroots under the iCaucus affiliate group mantle, and you know, especially when you think coming up to 2014, we can do what they did in Indiana with John Murdoch. John Murdoch is an iCaucus endorsed candidate. They band together, and they got rid of Lugar. So that was a biggie. And we've done it in other places, but that was the latest. So we were very proud of that, and it gives us new hope. Okay, announcements. Tomorrow night, the Blue Ridge Tea Party Patriots. Glenn, say hello. Hello. Glenn Engelrum and his wife Ruth and Debbie Dante. Who else here from Blue Ridge? All right, I guess the 3 of them. They're going to have a continuation of what we're doing tonight, a congressional forum with our 2 candidates at the Bay Breeze restaurant. Wednesday, we have John Tedesco interview. Thursday on 6/14, how many of you remember Joe Wilson? He said, you lie? Well, guess what? He's going to be in Harrisonville at the Cedars, and he has endorsed our endorsed candidate, Dan Forrest, for Lieutenant Governor, and he is going to be at the Cedars. So he's going to be there for a fundraiser. Please, please, please come. It should be a lot of fun, and you'll get to meet Joe. And like I said, we have to get Dan on the finish line. He's great. I wish he was running for governor. Okay. Monday, 6:25. We need volunteers for a precinct walk for Dan Forrest. We need 20 people. You guys have been pretty good about signing up. We need some more. You can fill out the index cards on the table. Let me know. Thursday, 6/28 at the Skyland Fire Department. Buncombe Forward is hosting a Civitas workshop called Morality of Capitalism. It is free. So those are just what's coming up the past couple of weeks. And we are going to do another machine gun social. It looks now like September the 8th, but I'll know more tomorrow. So we need to do that because we have to support these candidates, and we got to raise money. Okay, now, just to give you a little background leading up to the congressional primary runoff forums for NC11. Our candidates, both of them, Vance and Mark, have gone through the iCaucus process. Part of the process is taking the candidate qualifying questionnaire, the CQQ. The CQQ consists of 50 questions asking for commitments to protect and champion individual rights, limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free markets when elected, and to demonstrate their commitment to these principles in their lives, personally, politically, and financially. Mark and Vance have gone through this process. They've gone through the CQQ, the interview, and the vote. The vote involved 8 iCaucus affiliate groups, including Asheville Tea Party and Blue Ridge Tea Party Patriots, and a whole bunch of others. The vote was a dead even tie. So there was no endorsement for the primary. And then to complicate things, neither Mark nor Vance was able to get 40% of the vote to win the primary. So we had to figure out what to do, grassroots. We had to come to a consensus on how we were going to handle this. And one of the goals for Independence Caucus is to make sure that the grassroots folks are united and that we're not going off in 20 different directions endorsing, 6 different candidates, because that's how we lose, to the candidates we don't want. There was a conference call with Mark and Vance and the affiliate group leaders on May 14th. Dara Bailey, the National Betting Director, was our moderator. Mike McLean from the Sons of Liberty Riders was out of the country at the time, but he's aware of the call and supports our conclusions. The leaders agreed that we would not issue an endorsement vote for this runoff, but have candidate forums with Mark and Vance for the purpose of defining the differences between them. So you can make an informed decision and decide which of the two you feel would best represent we, the people. In so doing, we lay the groundwork of uniting both camps for November. We have other races to win. We have Lieutenant Governor, we have Secretary of State, we have Superintendent of Instruction, and oh yeah, we have the President. We need everyone's energy and effort, and we do not need to be divided. And there's 2 points of clarification before we get started. iCaucus will issue another after the primary runoff for affiliate groups. The other point is that we do not automatically endorse candidates because they won the primary or because they have an R after their name. That was a great source of apoplexy for the Republican Party in 2010. And they came after us with a vengeance. Not that it deterred us in any way, shape, or form. We continued to do what we did. We kept, saying what we had to say, and that's, candidate needs to step up to the process. Needs to get through it. They want our support. And so that's what we are sticking to, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. The days of pulling the lever just because it's an R or a D or whatever is over. The party is over. And we are very serious, and we are going to, whether who likes it or not, we are going to try very hard to get this country back on track. And that's what we're going to do. Part of the action plan that we came up with is we've been compiling questions and information on the candidates with the help of iCaucus Oppositional Research Team. We have come up with specific questions targeting issues, concerns, and unanswered questions for both and each of the candidates. We're also taping this, and it will go up on our website for anyone to see. Now, for the sake of time in covering all of the issues, each of our candidates will have approximately 2 minutes to answer. Linda is our timer, and Anne has promised to throw plates. At the minute 30-second mark, she will hold up a yellow plate, and then at 2 minutes, she will hold up a red plate. And then, as I said, she said to me over the phone, she said, "Can I throw them?" So, beware. Okay. After all of the questions have been answered, we will open it up with questions from the audience, and then they can close with a 2-minute closing. We're going to start with a 3-minute introduction of a description from each of our candidates on how you perceive you are different from your opponent. And we have a table with a microphone. So if Vance and Mark want to come up here, that would be wonderful. And I thank you so much for coming.
Fremont. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Vance said that I've won the coin toss twice, and it's my turn to go first this time. So we're not going to flip a coin, and I'll go first. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for this process that hopefully will be productive as we start to look at the issues. My wife of 32 years, Debbie, is here. My son, who is studying to be a conservative constitutional attorney, is here with me today, and so I got the privilege of having both of them come over with me. But as we look at this, one of the things that Jane asked us to do in this 3-minute opening was...
Close that line behind you.
Sorry.
Can we start over with my time?
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. You know, one of the things Jane asked us to do is to try to highlight the differences in terms of where we perceive ourselves to be different from the Vance, and as we've done that, one of as we look at it, we feel like we've had a clear and consistent conservative message for the last 9 months, our campaign. And as we look at it, we believe that one of the highlighted differences that we will see is really in our jobs plan. As we've looked at it, Vance has come out with his jobs plan. We've had a 4-point plan for many, many months that really looks at 4 things. One is to cut corporate taxes, close the loopholes, and cut corporate taxes. The second part of that was to cut regulations. We believe regulations and government intervention into our lives is the biggest problem that is stifling job growth. The third part of that is to repatriate the $1.25 trillion that is sitting abroad not paying taxes now, allow that for the next 20 months to be brought in tax-free and be invested in our economy. And then the fourth is to have a real systemic energy policy that truly creates jobs, but also brings our fuel costs down where it's not a burden on not only families, but on our seniors. Can you imagine if the cost of energy has gone up twice and yet their fixed income has failed to increase, just the burden there. So as we see it, we see a real difference there. Vance describes our plan as a macro plan. He describes his as a micro plan. And there is where I believe that we've got a major difference. Even back in 2010, Vance admitted that having micro involvement, having the government involved in job creation is not something that we need to do. We need to look at it and have it from a macro point of view. And so as we look at throughout history, any time that the government gets involved in trying to micromanage our economy, the results have been disastrous. And what we've got to do is make sure that we don't do that. And specifically looking at 4 points of his plan, when you look at really what we've got to understand is the greatest impediment to job growth is truly out of control taxation and regulations. And if we see that, his plan does not address that. We also need to look at, from a business standpoint, looking at businesses don't locate in Western North Carolina strictly based on the beauty. They do it on economic reasons, and that's where we've got to make sure that we focus on. Also, in funding his plan, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. We've got an earmark ban right now that we pledge to support and that we should support, and so in doing that, I don't know where the funding would come through from. Thank you. She didn't throw it, thank you.
I was watching. I didn't bring mine. I'm Vance Patterson, your neighbor down in Burke County. I'm a father of 4, married 37 years to my wife, Mary Jo. And I always say that because it makes me feel good. Thank you all for holding this event so Mark and I can get in front of you and explain some of the difference. This campaign had 11 candidates at one time. It's down to 2 now. Everybody knew there'd be a runoff, and that's what we've got. What's interesting is the last 2 candidates are both businessmen, which tells me the people of Western North Carolina believe that business principles are the best way to solve the problems we're having right now. Your challenge is to decide which one of us is the best businessman. I tell people I'm an American businessman because I use American ingenuity, the American free enterprise system, and the American work ethic to start companies and create jobs. I've started 16 companies. 2 of these companies made the Inc. 500 list for the 500 fastest growing companies in America, and twice I've been Entrepreneur of the Year finalist here in our Southeast region. I currently own and operate a company that makes industrial fans. I am the manufacturer. I am Tea Party. I'm the small business owner who for 38 years couldn't wait to get to work and then couldn't wait to get home. And there just wasn't much in between that interested me until Obama got elected. And then I knew I had to step up and do something with my experience, my common sense, and my passion to turn this country around and save it for our future generations. One of the first things I did was help initiate the first Tea Party in Burke County back in 2009. My wife and I have never protested anything, and we grew up in the 60s. But there we were, April 15th, with our homemade signs, along with 500 other people on the old Burke House Courthouse Green. We were protesting that we had been taxed enough already. While I am creating jobs here in Western North Carolina and bringing companies in from across the country and around the world, you will know that I'm using the Tea Party principles, Freedom Works, and 912 principles to reform our government in Washington and turn it around. And this is where Mark and I will not be the same person. Mark and I do not agree on term limits. I support term limits, no ifs or qualifications about it. I will initiate a plan to put all Congress on the 22nd Amendment, where our president is limited to 2 4-year terms. I am the only candidate who is against amnesty in immigration. If they don't go home, it is amnesty. I am your only candidate who will vote not to increase the debt limit, the debt ceiling. If it causes a crisis, let it be now, before it's too late, before the crisis gets too bad. And I am your only candidate who on Homeland Security says it should go back to the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice and get those 216,000 private contractors out of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this question is for both of you. When you took the iCaucus CQQ, you committed to our principles of fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free market capitalism. In 3 of the sections entitled The Role of Government and National Sovereignty, Personal Character, and Federal Taxation, you committed to reject legislation that is not specifically enumerated in our Constitution. Specifically, you made a commitment to only legitimate role of our national taxation policy is to only raising necessary revenues on constitutionally enumerated government services as outlined in Article 1, Section 8. Please tell us how you have conducted yourself in your business to date that has demonstrated this commitment, the commitment to limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free market capitalism. Mark, we can start with you, I guess.
I'm going to give you a couple of examples, both personal and business, when it comes to the role of government, because it becomes very personal. As a small business guy, that's what we do. But as we look at this from a personal standpoint, when you can't say you're against something and then take tax subsidies and tax credits that basically go against those enumerated powers that you have. And so from a business standpoint, we have not been involved in that. From a personal standpoint, we've made some very hard decisions to really not rely on the government. It goes all the way from my son in terms of where he goes to school. He goes to school at a college that doesn't take any federal funds. We made a conscious decision because he is going to be a constitutional attorney, and quite frankly, having the influence of the federal government over what he learns is not something that we want to do. And so making that personal decision was a costly one for us. You know, I can give you the numbers, but as we look at that, we need to make sure. And then also on a personal standpoint, when it comes to helping family members and others, it's very, very easy to say, okay, well, just let the government do it. And we have, with both my dad on a number of occasions and other family members, we've stepped up, and when it would have been very easy to let a federal program take over and do it, that's not the role of the federal government. It used to be the role of families and churches. That's where it needs to get back to, and we need to make sure that we cut spending, and it needs to start on a personal level. It has with us.
Thank you.
All right, the question is, demonstrate, don't read the whole thing again.
No, how have you conducted yourself in your business to date that has demonstrated this commitment, the commitment to limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free market capitalism in your personal and financial life?
All right, in our company, we looked to the government for nothing. I mean, when we were having problems back in 2009, when 08, when the economy crashed, and we went into 09, we did not go to the government with our needs. We turned to ourselves, our own resources. We lost money for the first time in 17 years with my fan company. And we didn't ask the government for anything. I borrowed on my house and loaned the company $235,000 just to keep the doors open and make payroll. So we were self-reliant. We did not go to the government. As far as like on Obamacare, everybody in my company has health insurance, paid for by the company. We don't look to the government for financing of our health care, and I'm totally against Obamacare. It needs to be repealed on the basis of a violation of the 5th, 9th, and 10th Amendments. On supporting charities, my company supports at least 10 different charities, and these are done through recommendations by the employees, and that's where the basis of my donating my salary to the people of Western North Carolina comes in. To take the money from the government that I would be making in my salary and donating it to all the charities of Western North Carolina. So we're not dependent on the government. That will be funds that I have earned. This is demonstrating how to use what we have to provide for what other people need in order that they can support their families. I have another one here, as I was making notes. You got to be careful when you ask this kind of question, because you look at somebody that says, well, you know, we take advantage of a government program. I would venture to say just about everybody in this room knows we shouldn't be dependent on the government, but you probably have a mortgage exemption on your house when you file for your taxes, and you take advantage of that. So be careful when you look at people that take advantage of exemptions. Okay.
Okay, I have a specific follow-up question for Vance. Can you specifically tell us how your solar company demonstrates your commitment to limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free market capitalism when it is advertised as take advantage of state rebates, help control climate change, take advantage of federal tax credits, and utility company incentives? Are those programs a legitimate purpose of our national taxation policy that comes under raising revenues to fund constitutionally enumerated government services?
So be careful when you throw stones at somebody that takes advantage of these exemptions, because everybody in the room probably does that with their home exemption. Now, I'm against government funding of anything and the tax exemptions. We offer that. We don't use it in our company. We point it out for our customers that they do qualify for this with the products that we sell. We do not take any exemptions with our company. We do not provide those for somebody else. We don't sell those, but they are available. Just as your accountant would advise you to take advantage of your home exemption, we tell the people that it's out there, because in a good business sense, that's what we have to do for our customers. Follow-up question?
I know, as I said, you know, I mean, the only thing I would have to add to this is that, you know, took a picture of it, and you know, we've got legitimate concerns about taking state and federal money and climate change, and we are concerned about that.
I've been involved in energy savings since 1981, doing evaporative roof cooling systems. You know, these are not solar panels, they're not wind generators. This is a sprinkler system that goes on the roof. It takes about 50% of the heat out of the building. And so I've got experience with it. And if we sell a product and it benefits the people that are working inside the building, the heat stress, or saves energy, which it does because it eliminates 50% of the heat coming into the building, then we're gonna sell that. And it pays back in less than 2 years, as opposed to and has no government subsidies.
According to your ad, it does. It says establish green public image, take advantage of state rebates, help control global climate change, take advantage of federal tax credit, and take advantage of utility company incentives. So we're just pointing it out.
And that's in the business world.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Our next question for both of you is, while the approximate 16 trillion national debt certainly is worrisome for the near term, the greater concern for the country should be the approximate 120 trillion in unfunded liabilities that the New Deal and subsequent progressive programs have accumulated. How would you propose we address this overwhelming debt burden, which grows by 2 to 3 trillion each year, over and above, and over 1 trillion per year current shortfall? The annual debt burden increase is larger than our current annual revenues by some 2.3 trillion. How would you propose to solve this incredible problem?
So the question is, how do we balance our budget and reduce the debt?
Yes, with 102 trillion, 120 trillion in unfunded mandates, and we don't have enough money coming in.
I talk about using business principles to balance a budget, to stop the bleeding. And what we do in business is we consolidate, and then we cut, and then we control it. I've done this a number of times in my business when I've had to, when the economy has crashed. And this is what our government needs to do. We need to reduce our departments from 14 down to 11. That would be getting rid of the Department of Energy. That would be getting rid of the Department of Education and moving it back to the states. Moving Homeland Security back to the Department of Defense and Justice. And getting rid of the EPA and moving it into the Department of Interior. And getting rid of the czars. Once you get that done, then you get the people in and tell them to cut their staff by 30%. Now, this is what we do in business. And it's not that we want to cut people and lay them off. It's what happens is you end up with the best in your departments. And they're charged with doing what they've done before, and what they do is they look at the processes and take out the inefficiencies, the duplications, and they come up with better ideas and better ways of doing things. And that is where the savings happens. And then you control it. That's the budget. Now, getting the debt down, you've got to grow the economy. You make us an investor nation where other countries come to us and invest. Make us a depository nation where tax exempt on your deposits, like they do down in the Caymans or over Switzerland. When was the last time Switzerland had to borrow money? They don't. They loan money. These are the kind of ideas that a businessman can bring to turning our economy around, growing the economy, and that will reduce the debt.
Vance and I disagree on this particular area because I don't see just cutting being enough to really make a difference. When you look at the 2.5 times our GDP at this particular point, it's not going to be enough to just cut. Now, do we need to make cuts? Without a doubt. Do we need major modifications in terms of the entitlement programs that we have? We do. We also need to grow our economy. As we start to look at this, one of the factors that I believe that we've got facing us is we've got an aging population that we need to make sure that we stay good to our commitment to them, but we have to modify it. To give you a prime example with Medicare, originally when Medicare came in, we were looking at a average life span between the time that they actually went on Medicare to where the actuarial tables show that they would no longer be on that was 5 years. It's now grown to 15 years. Now we can be thankful that everybody is living longer, but you can't have the same system in place today when you're sitting there paying it. The unfunded part of Medicare is about $239,000 per person. That is not sustainable, and as the numbers that you have shared, you've got there, there's no way for us to do it. So one, we have to cut. The other part that we have to look at is creating an economy that is once again vibrant again. And in doing that, the only way that I see is for us, because we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, is to become a net exporter of natural gas, of liquid natural gas. If we go through and start to create energy jobs where we're not, the trade deficit gets done away with very quickly if we start importing the 10 million barrels of oil a day.
Okay, this is for both candidates, and it's pretty much just for disclosure. Have you ever done business with companies and or entities, either domestic or foreign, private and governmental, that could be a personal conflict of interest for you in casting votes or serving on committees to review bills?
I have not. You know, we've been in the restaurant business. We've been in the real estate business, and really all of our contracts would be local in nature. No federal agencies that we've worked with. I did sell a piece of property, you know, one time to the federal government. And as I was thinking about the other question, that was probably the face of Whiteside, which is the oldest mountain in the steepest cliffs in the eastern United States. We actually sold that to the United States Forest Service, but to that extent, that's the only involvement that I've had with the federal government in my career in the last 30 to 35 years.
Interesting question. You know, my first reaction was no, and then I thought, well, wait a minute. You've probably got questions about, yes, we do sell fans, industrial fans to the government. Probably 3% of our sales, something like that, and they've gone overseas. Yes, we do sell fans to Saudi Arabia. We've got a distributor over there that sells. I've done business over there. I know what the culture is like in Saudi Arabia. China, we have done business in China. I know what the culture is like in China in dealing with the Chinese. Brazil, yes, I've done manufacturing operation in Brazil, where we set up a joint venture to manufacture down there. So I know the culture of Brazil and what to watch out for. Russia, set up a joint venture to manufacture industrial fans, our fans over in Russia, for distribution in the Eastern Europe. Did that for 6 years. I know the culture of Russia and what it's like to do business there. So, good question, because I've done business all around the world. I know these cultures. And, you know, can I be corrupted? Absolutely no. Can't be done. At my age, I'm 62, I'm not impressed with most of what I see around the world, especially the way they do business. I would be a tremendous asset in Congress, knowing these cultures and how to do business around the world that nobody else in the campaign has had. Right now, we're not doing business as we were overseas. We do ship over there, but those joint ventures of, you know, the 08 recession took its toll. So I have the experience, I have the knowledge, but I have the integrity to know where I live and where my country is.
Thank you. This is also for both of the candidates. Which committees do you want to serve on when you get to DC? And would you in any way stand to profit from serving on these committees with government contractors to promote your business?
The two committees that I've outlined, one would be Energy and Commerce, and the other would be perhaps an Interior Appropriations Committee. with regards to Western North Carolina. I see those two entities being the greatest, perhaps, impediment in terms of dealing with the EPA and being able to control them. And so to get on those two committees, I think what we could see is the environmental grab that we see out there, that truly it's probably not the political correct thing to say that. But in doing that, I see that the EPA has come in way overstepped its bounds and is coming into every aspect of our life. And so those two committees would be the ones that I would most like to serve on, and think that could benefit not only Western North Carolina the best, but our country the best. Any personal benefit? No, there wouldn't be any personal benefit in serving on those. And I think if there's even a hint of impropriety when you serve on a committee, you need to make sure that you don't serve on that committee. It's one of those things that, if there's smoke, there many times is fire, and so in doing that. Those would be areas that I think could affect policy the greatest and control it. We've got way out of bounds with allowing some of these agencies to go way beyond the scope of what they're supposed to do. The only way that we ever rein them back in is to cut their funding and really hit them where their heart is. And because we've allowed the administration to just allow them to go rampant.
And we did some research on this, because my first reaction was, something with financial services and small business, those two areas. Well, we did some research on this. There are 21 committees up there and 106 subcommittees that we found. I never knew that. We know that as a freshman congressman, you're not going to get appointed to the budget committee or, Ways and Means committee. So it's important to look at the subcommittees and see what's below those. And that's what we did. And I made out a list, and there's the list. There's like 7 committees, and each one's got 4 subcommittees under it, average. So I've got like 28 that I'm looking at that I would be qualified for, to work with. And yes, it's in the area of small business. Committee on Small Business has Agriculture, Energy, and Trade Subcommittee, Contracting and Workforce, Economic Growth, Tax and Capital Gains, Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations. Any of those would be good for me to be on. But we went beyond just the obvious. And another one is the Veterans Affairs. Really concerned about the veterans that are coming back and not getting what they should have as far as the opportunity to get back into society. And there's one committee on economic opportunity. I would love to be on that committee. Very good at that as far as creating companies and being creative and finding jobs for people. Also on oversight and investigations. 2 others that really appealed to me. One was in financial services, the domestic monetary policy and technology. Why does that appeal to me? Because Ron Paul is chairman of that subcommittee. And then there was one other, national security and homeland defense and foreign operations. This was under oversight and government reform. And that's got Jason Chavitz on it, the original Tea Party guy that went up there. I would love to work on foreign relations and oversight for that committee. So,
Thank you. Okay, under fiscal responsibility for both of you, how are you financing your campaigns to date? What have you raised? How much of your own money have you invested? How are you financing your campaigns between now and the 17th of July? And how are you going to do it after July 17th to November? That's the first part of the question.
A candidate is allowed to loan the campaign $250,000. Now you can put more in than that, but that's all you can get back out for each election cycle. I am self-financed. It's just the way I've started my businesses. I don't go to the bank and borrow a lot of money to start a business. I don't have investors. My wife and I mean, she has tolerated this for 37 years now, of me using the house to borrow money to start a business. And that's how I've started my businesses. I'm using the house, I have borrowed on the house to finance this campaign. I think I've probably loaned it, you asked that, didn't you? 260, maybe 270,000 so far. in this campaign cycle. My campaign was not to be about fundraising, and that's what you got to realize. When you first start a campaign, they want to know where you're going to get the money and how you're going to raise it. How good are you going to be at fundraising? Well, in business, that is not a major concern when you're starting something and you've got a good idea and you're passionate about it. I will take care of the funding. I mean, that's always been my attitude. So that's the way I approached this campaign, was from a business standpoint. I didn't want to be tied down to fundraising. I didn't want to be indebted to people loaning me money and stuff. I didn't want to be tied to their ideas and restricted from spending time on rolling out this campaign and doing the work that I was better at doing. So we've raised very little from other people, maybe $10,000, $12,000, something like that, of other donations. Now, after the primary, and I guess Mark will tell you how much he's got in the campaign. After the primary, when we win the primary, raising money won't be a problem. I mean, that's when the people step up. The pockets open, the doors open, and everybody wants to beat Obama. And I can give them good reason to do it. When Mark and if Mark gets past me or I get past him, we're going to have no problem beating the Democrat. You haven't run until you've run against a Republican in this race. And I would just give anything to be running against a Democrat. So I see no problem with fundraising, just like I've had no problem today.
I'm not as optimistic as the problem with fundraising. It's a lot harder. We've been doing it from day one. We put in about $260,000 of our own money from day one. We've raised approximately $190,000 now. Those have gone anywhere from $5 donations to $5,000 PAC check from Family Research Council. The key with raising money, obviously, is that you don't want to raise money from groups that you don't align with from a political point of view. You know, somebody asked me, he said, well, are you concerned about the Family Research Council giving you $5,000 and you voting the way that they want you to vote? I'm not concerned, because I would be 100%er on their scorecard anyways, and so that's not an issue. I do see that really what we're trying to do for the next, until July 17th, is make fundraising calls, and it's tough. You know, we're making calls every single day, and asking people in difficult times to give money is a tough thing. I do see that the general election is going to probably cost somewhere around $1 million to be successful. I don't take it as a cakewalk. Hayden Rogers, it is in our favor, but Hayden Rogers is not an easy shoot-over, and he's raising money at an unbelievable clip. We've raised money for other candidates before, and it is always difficult to do that. So by saying what will we do, we will continue to ask for people to give us money and hopefully have the support. We've had well over 300 people contribute to our campaign today.
Okay, a follow-up question to that. How do you intend to pay off any debts you incur in your campaign?
We put the money up not expecting that money to come back. I mean, just to be totally transparent, what they say is, oh gosh, you loan the money, and eventually when you get in as a member of Congress, that the money's come back to you, and $50,000 that we can do that. But I think any time that you run, and I know for Debbie and I, for our country, how hard it was to run for office 9 months ago. I would have questioned my sanity in terms of running, but our country is worth it, and quite frankly, we're at a point where if we don't make personal sacrifices, every one of us, and every one of you in here have made sacrifices, both time, money, and effort. We have got to make those sacrifices to reclaim America, and in doing that, what we believe is that fundraising is a key component of that. Getting PAC checks and special interest checks to pay it back for groups that we're not aligned with would not be something that any of us should do, and that's my take on it.
Would you restate the premise of the question?
Yeah. How do you intend to pay off any debts you incur in your campaign?
You know, the campaign can't borrow money and then pay it back later on, that I know of. I mean, that's certainly not the intention of what we're doing. It's not like you go to the bank and take out a loan and then the campaign's got to pay it back later. When I say I loan the campaign money, I mean, that I see that money is gone. I mean, that's just my contribution to what needs to be done. My gosh, when our founding fathers or ancestors stepped up to set up this country, they didn't say, well, what's this going to cost, and how am I going to get this back? That is not the idea. Mark and I are both going to serve. This is not a way for us to set up careers and make up make a lot of money and set up our families for life. That is not the idea. You could not get me out of the business world to do something like that. I see that we're losing the America that our parents left us. That is my motivation for stepping up. Not to make money or anything like that. I'm investing in that. My time. I'm taking time away from my company. I'm taking time away from my family. Borrowing on the house. Committing, pushing everything out there, as I do in the business world. But this is not to get a return on investment. This is to save America for our future generations. The generations I'll never meet. Those are the ones I don't want looking back on me and saying, what were you thinking to allow something like this to happen? Everything I can put in is going in. And it's not with the intention of, gee, I hope I win so I can pay this back. I'm not worried about that. If I am not your choice, I'm going to do very well doing what I was doing before. And that will pay my debts back. We turned our company around, and it is doing incredibly well this year. Thank you. But so really that question is really hard to understand. So I'm not worried about paying back debts out of the campaign itself.
Okay, a follow-up for Vance. It's going to take money to defeat Hayden Rogers, the Democrat, in November. Hayden out-fundraised you by 50 to 1. For every dollar you raised, Hayden raised 50. Hayden out-fundraised Mark by 2 to 1. You have raised 7,000 to Hayden's 302,000 in the category of reportable individual contributions, according to the latest FEC filings. You have self-funded your campaign, mortgaged your house, and you say you are not going to ask anyone for money. Do you have another, whatever it's going to take, $1 million, $1.2 million to fully fund your campaign? We want you to help America, but you have to get elected first. Can you please tell us how you're going to pay back these loans and finance the campaign?
Y'all are really hung up on money. And
yeah, we want to, if we're going to get you elected, you're going to need money to do this.
That is one of the problems with politics, is it's just all about money. And it's not. Doing the job and getting in front of people, we're going to do the fundraising. It will happen. We didn't see the need to get past the primary. And I've been outspent 2 to 1 on this thing. I just did the numbers. I'm sure Mark doesn't have a big bank account right now. We both got into the runoff, which everybody expected was going to happen. And I spent half as much as he did, which means I'm very good at managing money. When we get past the primary and get into the general election, we will turn to fundraising. And we've looked at it. We know how it's done. We haven't spent our time on it because, see, I had to learn 13 counties up here. Mark had to learn 4 out of the old 10th district. I had to get name exposure up here for 13 counties. I had to spend my time doing that. I knew what it would take, and I got it done. And we're in the runoff right now, and we're okay with funding. When we get past the runoff, it'll turn towards funding. And I know how to do it. I've always been able to come up with the money. No, I am not going to write a check, and cannot write a check for $1.2 million. That is not my plan. It will be done with fundraising to go out and knock on the doors, get on the phones, and it'll take me away from the campaign some, but we'll have time to do it. And it will happen.
Thank you. This is for Mark. Now, you have been labeled, rightly or wrongly, as the establishment candidate. When one looks at the FEC report of your contributors, the location of your office in downtown Hendersonville, the support from a former GOP chair of ill repute, it becomes apparent why the label has stuck. The deep concern of Asheville TPAC and our fellow I-Caucus affiliate groups is that you, like many others in D.C., will be bought and paid for by special interest groups who will fill your campaign coffers in exchange for favorable votes. You will vote the party line, and you will not be beholden to we the people and participate in principles that made this nation great. Where are we going wrong with this assessment?
Well, thank you for asking that. You know, Vance has been getting the hard questions. It's my turn. And so, in doing that, as I look at it over the last 20 or 30 years, you know, Vance talked about the fact that they didn't demonstrate anything and that they got involved when Obama was elected. I wish I could say that the problem was with Obama, but it is a huge problem, an attack on our freedoms, on our Constitution, and unreasonable spending and taxation for 20 or 30 years. The number of letters that Debbie and I have written to both Republicans and Democrats would be unbelievable. And so as I track it back, what I want you to do is follow the money. You know, one of the things y'all have talked about is the money. I challenge anyone to find money that I've sent to federal candidates at the time. Now, I'm not saying that they might not be more liberal today, but at the time when I sent it, every single time we've spent money, it has been for the conservative candidate every single time. And we quit giving money to the Republican National Committee when they supported Arlen Specter over conservative Pat Toomey. And so what would happen is we continue to get those calls because we gave money and we would get calls, and my wife would say, Pat Toomey. When I would get it, you know, I'd say, well, just remember, Pat Toomey. They quit calling. We have been taken off their list, you know, and so they don't call anymore. But really, when it comes from a standpoint of standing up for what we've done, I've fought Republicans in terms of embracing international treaties, you know, both presidential and congressional. I've made calls to Republican congressmen when they were wrong on stem cell research and said, let me tell you, we've supported you, but if you vote wrong here, we're going the other way. And so it's more about being principled than it is an R behind your name.
How do you spell Toomey?
T-O-O-M-E-Y.
I'll start using that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, on free markets, has to do with job growth. Tell us how will you use your vote to promote job growth in NC11? Do state and federal tax incentives, going green, and utility rebates have any place in creating free market competition and job growth of the private sector? If so, how? If not, why not?
Well, the answer to the last one is no. We should get rid of any kind of tax break or anything. I am for the fair tax. Simplify our tax code and get all forms of social engineering out of it. And that is one easy example. If they want you to do something, they give you a tax break, which is what a green tax is. If they don't want you to do it, they're going to tax you. And we need to get rid of all social engineering like that. So that is a good example of what needs to go. Our taxes should be for two things: pay our bills and defend our country. And beyond that, it should be a non-issue. What exactly will I do to vote to bring jobs here? Lower taxes on the macroeconomic plan that Mark talked about earlier. Lower taxes, reduced regulations, reduce the size of government, reduce government involvement in our daily lives. Now, beyond that, that is the typical status quo macro plan in Washington, and then you're supposed to sit back and wait for it to happen. I'm not very good at waiting. I'm a boomer, and we did not get where we are by waiting in line and waiting for things to happen. I certainly didn't wait for things to happen when the economy turned bad, waiting for it to turn around. I turned my company around, and we're doing great right now. And that's what we need to do, is not just take the beauty of Western North Carolina. That's not what we're talking about. I've been with all 17 county managers to find out what kind of resources they had, what kind of work ethic they had, and what kind of jobs they wanted. That is the basis of a microeconomic plan. Then you use the database that I've got, 80,000 companies, distribution centers and manufacturing companies, to market that to them, to bring them in. Because the companies that are coming back are not the same as the ones that left. They're not the huge 500 to 1,000 employee companies. They're more like my company, 60 to 100 employees. Those are the ones that pay better, care more about their employees, and their jobs that cannot be exported. I know what those company owners are looking for, and we've got the quality of life here in Western North Carolina.
Well, Vance and I disagree on this particular thing. I don't disagree with the first premise, which says that they have no role in the free market. I mean, obviously, we allow the free market to go. It's been proven over and over again from the 1920s. Every time we get less government and less taxes, we see the economy take off. And I don't think we have to sit back and wait for it to happen, because when we do those things, we see economic prosperity happen real quick. If we look at the plan that Vance is outlining and truly looking at it from a micro point of view, we already have those things in place, both on the state and federal level. They don't work. I'm on a board that is economic development, that goes out and reaches out to manufacturing and to film industry and everything else. And what happens is that we somehow think that if we market things properly, and it's a broken system, that it will still work, that eventually somebody will believe that the system is working. And the problem is taxes and regulations. It's not on how we market it. And I found it very interesting that on May the 18th, one day after Vance came out with his plan, that Obama in his 2013 budget comes out with a $1 billion initiative to promote manufacturing across the country. And so to me, I see the parallels there, that it's micro management of the free market enterprise system, and that doesn't work. And so what we've got to do is make sure that we roll back taxes. If we do that, we roll back taxes and regulations for every 5% that we roll back regulations, we see 1.2 million jobs. So with a 20% reduction in regulation, we will see 4.8 million jobs created, and we'll see that quickly. And so allow the free market to take off. The subsidies picks winners and losers, and we can't do that.
Okay, I just have a point that I need to clarify with Vance. You are saying that there is no place for federal tax incentives, going green, and utility rebates in creating jobs. Yes?
If we had the fair tax, yes.
But we don't.
That's right.
So is there any place for state incentives, federal tax incentives for companies?
I don't believe we should have them, no.
Okay.
And I would not vote for them.
All right,
and I would vote to get rid of them.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at here is that, okay, you say that, but we're going back to your solar company, and you've taken state, federal tax incentives, you've promoted it as climate change friendly, and so I'm confused. We are confused, and that's why we are asking this question.
There is a market out there.
But you're taking federal and state tax money, our money, to promote this.
I'm not. No, I'm not. We don't.
It's your company.
Yes, but we don't take any federal money. We don't get any tax incentives. We don't get any tax breaks.
But you're promoting it.
Because,
and so that's, we're really trying to get it really clear to understand where both of you are coming from when it comes to this, because this is a very important.
Jane, do you have a home? Do you have a house?
Yes.
Do you take a tax exemption on your house? The mortgage exemption?
Probably.
Yes. Well, I'm sure you do. Answer honestly. Yes, you do.
Probably
Okay.
do, yeah.
Do you see that as disingenuous in your beliefs? Why would you do that? I mean, why would you take that? And I'm not picking on you. I'm trying to tell you how business works. That we don't get any tax breaks from it, but there's a market out there for it. And yes, we will sell to the market. We owe that to our employees. that we will do everything we can, you know, that's legal. Because I've got 60 or more families, depending on my business, to support their families. And so it is out there, we market to it, and people in California will buy it. Okay.
Okay, but the point that we're trying to get here is that we do not want conflict of interest when you go to DC with taking, you know, promoting all these tax incentives, federal and state, coming down to support companies like we had with Solyndra and the rest of them, taking advantage of that, because what it is theft of our tax money. And this is what we're trying to get at, all right? And you committed to that when both of you did, when you took the CQQ.
Yes, I will vote against tax breaks for solar energy. Absolutely.
That's going to hurt your business.
What? Okay, I will vote against it. Any tax breaks. I don't know what else I can say.
Okay. Fair enough.
May I jump in on that?
No.
You can just wait, and we'll get to you.
Okay. All right.
What would be, you ought to pay attention to, is I know more about energy, solar, thermal, passive, all those things, than probably anybody here in the room, unless somebody can contest that. I have the experience, and I know what works and what doesn't work. That's my background.
Yeah, as I said, the solar and the wind, and that's not the issue. The issue that we're worried about are the federal tax money coming in to subsidize private enterprise like they've been.
I think that's wrong, very wrong. My company doesn't do it.
Obviously, we don't want that, and that's why I was
right.
Questioning.
Yeah, and I'd say from a solar standpoint, you know, we've had for 35 years trying to create solar, wind, and alternative forms of energy. And while the premise is wonderful, we know that even now it makes up less than 5% of our energy needs. And part of that is because it doesn't pay. You know, when you really get down to it, it doesn't pay. It didn't pay 35 years ago. And the only way that it does pay is with fuel prices up around $10 a gallon, or subsidies, and so that's why we need to do away with it. But I'll take Vance at his word. If he's gonna vote against them, that's great.
Thank you. All right. Getting back to this. All right. What is your understanding of Agenda 21, Sustainable Growth and Development, and how does it fit into the free market job growth? Both candidates.
Free market job growth on Agenda 21? I don't see that link.
It's big business.
You know, Agenda 21, you could talk 15, 20 minutes on it. It started in 1987 with our common accord, or whatever it was that the UN came up with. It was a study that showed that world poverty and pollution was caused by developing nations. Big surprise. However, the fault is with the developed nations, that we're consuming too much. In 1992, they came out with the Rio Accord, Agenda 21, down in Rio. 18,000 people from 100 and some nations met down there and came up with Agenda 21. And what it stated was that basically you're going to start losing your freedoms, you lose your property, you lose your freedom. And then 5 years later, they came out with pushing it down to the local level. Agenda 21 basically takes away your property rights and pushes you into pack and stack communities, and once you lose your property rights, you've lost your freedom. I wasn't worried about this. I thought this will never happen in America because our culture is too much against it. But sure enough, in 1997, they came out with the Culture Agenda 21, which plans on changing our culture. My first exposure to it was in business in about 7 years ago with Walmart. They wanted us to develop a sustainable product. And I said, well, our product already lasts a lifetime. They said, no, we want it environmentally friendly. And I said, we're moving air. We don't hurt anything. And so I soon learned what they meant by the sustainable. I've had numerous encounters with Agenda 21 in business, including a pack and stack community that they wanted us to provide energy consultation to. And the first thing they said in the meeting was 3 things that man has invented that have destroyed mankind: the air conditioner, the TV, and the automobile. And I just wanted to hear their presentation, but I have a lot of experience with it. I know it, and we got to root it out and get rid of it.
You know, it's actually a deterrent to job growth, because basically what they're going to do is take most of western North Carolina, if you look at the maps and some of the things that some of these agendas look at, and put so much of it off limits to people. And so they're saying we're going to have this as a pod where people can live. We'll use it from a mass transit standpoint. And so they've taken it from a planning aspect, obviously, to more of a property rights issue where it's a land grab. We've been familiar with this in an intimate way, my son and I, researching this for many years. And if you take it all the way back, it really started with the Ramsar Treaty in Iran, which was the basis for the Clean Water Act. And it didn't go far enough. And it said, you know, we're only protecting wetlands. You know, we need to go beyond just protecting wetlands. So Agenda 21 started as a 5-page document. I think it's up to 322 pages now. And President Clinton signed an executive order that says, here's what we're going to do, is we're going to establish this and take it. But we ought not be just concerned about that, because it's about international involvement on a local level, and it's about international control on a local level. But here's where we need to look at Agenda 21 in terms of our private property rights. Look at the Law of the Sea treaties in terms of all the international authority over the oceans. Look at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in terms of telling us how to raise our children. And look at the UN Small Arms Treaty. Every one of them is coming after our freedoms. Those 4 areas we need to be concerned about. The biggest one, although we're dealing with Agenda 21 now, is the Law of the Sea, because what it will do is provide a taxing funding mechanism for the international body. And when you see an assault on our national sovereignty, it will be through the Law of the Sea treaties, because they can fund themselves and not have to depend on us for funding.
Thank you. Good. Right there.
If you had been in Congress, would you have voted for the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act? Why or why not?
No, I mean, it takes away our individual liberties and freedoms, and what we've got is, as you start to look at that, you know, anytime that we start looking for national security reasons, whenever you hear the word security, and we're starting to protect our security, whether it be national security, financial security, personal security, you need to understand that you're about to give up a freedom. And that's what they did, is in exchange for that, quote, protection, they gave up real freedoms in terms of our rights and our due process. And so no, would I have voted for it? The answer to that is no. There are a number of other bills that have been passed that are similar in terms of taking away our freedoms and our due process guaranteed under the Constitution, and we can't have that. We need to make sure that we stand up constitutionally. I've asked Dr. Ferris, who is a constitutional attorney who's argued before the Supreme Court, to look at all legislation on my behalf and say, okay, does this pass the constitutional muster? You know, we complain about activist judges. One of the reasons why we have activist judges is because Congress does not do its job in vetting out properly the fact that is it constitutional or not. They pass it off to the judges and say, we expect you to make the decision. So Congress needs to come back and make sure that they do their job, and then we won't have to worry about activist judges quite as much. Thank you.
Did you read the question again?
If you had been in Congress, would you have voted for the National Defense Authorization Act? Why or why not?
No, I wouldn't. But there's a saying, you know, the gate's closed, the horse is gone. It's already done. So what do we do next? I'm the only candidate who has said I would vote to push Homeland Security back where it was, into the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice. The reason it was set up was because the two weren't communicating, and there was a downfall, and we had, of course, 9/11. That shouldn't be a problem anymore. Right now, there are 216,000 private contractors working for the Department of Homeland Defense. What happens when there are too many people involved in something? They start looking for things to do. And that is why they're getting so much into our private lives. You know, overseas they're using the drones, and just recently they talked about a drone that has got an eye on it that can see just incredibly. You know, it's got like a macro eye, and not to kill people, but I can see very shortly down the road where our local Homeland Security Department is using those here in the United States to watch people. This is Big Brother watching. We need to step up and get rid of it and move it back. We should be able to trust our Department of Defense to take care of what needs to be done overseas, and we should be able to trust our Department of Justice here with the FBI and the State Board of Investigations to take care of what needs to be done here in the United States. You know, to ask would I have voted for it, you know, that's an easy no. But then what happens? And that's one of the problems we've got right now with the questions that are being asked. What would you do about something? You know, what would you do about the professional politician? Where are the term limits? Where's the question about that? Where's the question about not voting to raise the debt limit?
It's coming.
Good. Okay. But, you know, it's, the Homeland Defense is a huge problem for our freedoms here in the United States, and it's getting worse. And nobody is stepping up and trying to do anything about it. And you need new people in Washington to do that.
The next one is about Obamacare. John Boehner has proposed tweaking Obamacare if the Supreme Court rules it constitutional. In your view, is this the right course to take? Why or why not?
Mark and I are not going to disagree on these. You know, the idea is that we need to have questions for us to disagree on. You don't need to tweak Obamacare. It needs to boot. I mean, we've got to get rid of it and bore down and get it out of our medical system. It is down deep in a lot of different areas of our medical system. There's a lot that can be done to refine our medical system once Obamacare is taken out. You know, competition across state lines, getting rid of the donut hole, Medicaid going back, or Medicare going back to the states and block grants, things like that. The pre-existing conditions. There's a number of states, like 30 of them, that have already got a fund set up by the insurance companies to deal with people that have got pre-existing conditions. Not that you break your arm and go out and buy insurance, but if you get caught going in between one company and another and something's discovered, the next insurance company won't pick that up. There are funds set up, managed by the states, to take care of that. So, you know, there's a lot that the companies and the states can do without the government involvement. What was the last part of that? Okay. Well, I had more, but...
I'll answer for you. As we look at it, part of our original attack has been that we need to repeal Obamacare. To tweak it would be a mistake. Obviously, it goes against the individual mandate, goes against what I believe the Constitution allows, and it spans the scope of the Commerce Clause, which has already been used to usurp unbelievable freedoms already in terms of the Commerce Clause. And yet what we've done is we're using it in this unique way for the first time in history. And if we see this, we will see no limit to the federal power if we allow this to stand. So, you know, we're expecting a decision today or tomorrow from the Supreme Court, and so as we look at that, what I think the challenge is going to be is, even if they strike it down, we must repeal it. For this reason, is if it's struck down, it still remains on the books. All right, it said it's unconstitutional. God forbid Obama gets back in. And so we have 4 justices that are getting ready to retire. And so he puts in new justices. All of a sudden somebody files a new court case. It goes up through the appellate and gets to the Supreme Court. They come in and they overturn the decision based on a new set of justices, and we have national health care as we do today. So we still need to repeal it, even if the Supreme Court acts in the way that I hope that they do. And I think that we've lost the war on words here, because, you know, they said, well, we need to repeal and replace. And I had a guy at the gas station even this morning say, well, what is that? What we need to do is repeal and restart. And we start from scratch and do something that allows the private sector to take over. And if we restart it, truly we can do it. The last thing real quickly before she throws the plate is we need to take the war to them in terms of Medicare. It is taking a $500 billion hit because of Obamacare. Premiums for seniors will go up more than 2.5 times by the year 2014. That's what we need to be talking about, and that's what we need to do.
Okay, what leadership will you provide in the debt ceiling debate?
Well, Vance is a number of times over the last 3 or 4 forums has said he's the only candidate that would not have voted for the debt ceiling. And one, I haven't been at any forum where, one, he was the only one. I know that from my standpoint, signing on in terms of raising the debt ceiling, it's been one that I took to task with some of the members that actually had signed on it. I called it and lobbied against it, so I'm not sure. I also know that I wasn't the only one. There were others in the race that were that way. And so as we look at that, you know, he says he's the only one that would not vote to raise the debt ceiling limit. You know, what we've done is we've kicked the can down the road a number of times, and we come up with this super committee that's going to make some kind of unbelievable agreement later, and we'll have, and what we're finding out is that even with the super committee, they weren't committed to doing what they said they were going to do, and now we're facing that later on, saying that we might make some cuts eventually. You know, the problem is nobody wants to cut, and we've got to cut, and we've got to make those hard decisions now and make them on a real level. Will that maybe send me home? It might. If it does, so be it.
I'm still not sure whether I'm the only one who will vote no on raising the debt ceiling. I will vote no every time. That being said, the reason is the debt scares me more than anything else because it is coming at us very quickly. Right now it's getting close to $16 trillion. When it hits $25 trillion, which it can do in the next 5 to 7 years based on the growth of the debt, our interest alone on that debt will be $625 billion a year. That is almost what we spend to defend our country right now. If our credit rating drops to that of some of the places in Europe, like Spain and Italy, that interest alone could be over $1 trillion a year. We only took in $2.3 trillion last year in tax revenue. That is the economic demise of America. We can't have that. Things would change from then on. That's why I say, if there is to be a crisis, and this is what you hear from the establishment, that, well, if we don't increase the debt limit, there'll be a crisis, and we just can't stand it right now with a weak economy. Well, if there is to be a crisis, it needs to be now, before the debt gets too large and the time gets too late. We have got to stop kicking it down the road to the future generations. This has gone on long enough. You need people like me in Washington that will say, no, we don't increase it, and now what are we going to do?
Thank you. Do you see the threat of Sharia law in America as a major threat, a minor threat, or no threat?
I see it as a major threat, and we don't need to look too far to see why it is a major threat. We've already got decisions made in U.S. courtrooms that are made based on Sharia law and not on the Constitution. In Tampa in the early 2000s, a case was being tried with a Muslim plaintiff who actually wanted the Constitution to be used, and actually the judge used Sharia law instead. Is that a concern from not using our Constitution? Yeah. Is it a major concern? Yes, it's a major concern. Anytime that we start to go beyond the Constitution, whether it be with Sharia law or foreign law, we've got a major issue. We look at financial institutions because so much of the money comes from the Middle East. At the top of every single financial organization, we have people that are skilled in Sharia law, and they have what they call Sharia compliant bonds. And so yet what we've done is we've allowed them to come in to our financial system, into our court system. We don't need to look too far, because in England, where the rule of law is what it was all about, we have prime ministers that are actually now coming in that Sharia law is their, is their God. And we're seeing a takeover of the British Parliament. This is on a nation that the sun never set on, and yet what we're seeing is that kind of infiltration. So is it a major threat? Yes. Am I afraid of them? No. Do we need to be vigilant? Without a doubt. Read Mark Stein's book, America Alone, and it'll share with you some of the concerns that you need to be aware of.
Would you read it again, please? Kind of sets things up.
Do you see the threat of Sharia law in America as a major threat, a minor threat, or no threat?
I see Sharia law as a major threat to the world. But no country in the world is better qualified to take on that threat than America. We have the Christian Judeo values that our founding fathers founded this country on. And there is no stronger force in the world to stand up to evil. And Sharia law is evil. I've read the Quran. I've read it twice. I know what's in there. And the reason I read it is because I didn't want to be one of those people that says, well, I know what's in there, but I've never read it. I know what's in there. I have been to countries that have Sharia law, doing business. Saudi Arabia. My impression of Saudi Arabia is gray. I mean, everything was just kind of a gray hue over there. Their female population is depressed. They're living in it, and they're negating half of their resources over there by not letting their women participate in government, business, or anything outside of the family life. I've seen it in other areas of the world also. It is to be aware of it, to know that it's evil, and to stand up against it, and not let it get a foothold here in America. Our government is charged with defending all believers, but not all beliefs. And that's why I talk about God in government, that our founding fathers put God in the Constitution and in our Declaration of Independence. And we should not let this government remove the name of God from government, from our workplace, and from our schools. So yes, Sharia law is to be, I don't want to say feared any more than any other evil, but it needs to be stood up to, and we are the country to do it.
Thank you. What do you see as the greatest threat to our national security, and why?
Mine's very quick, and I already talked about it. It's the national debt. This is where I see just America coming apart at the seams. If we fail on our debt, which is coming at us, and nobody's doing anything to stop it, America will change from what we grew up with. And I think it'll be generations before it can be put back. I've already talked a lot on it, so I'll pass that off to Mark.
My answer is going to, I've had this question before, and my answer is going to change just a little bit. When you're driving down the road, you start to reflect on your answer a little bit. But our national security, we've got a threat in two areas, both from a debt standpoint, which I would agree with Vance on, that is just crushing. The person or the country behind that debt is probably what we need to be concerned about, and that is, quite frankly, is China. As we start to see, in terms of cheap labor, in terms of cheap products, we're paying for it, and it's coming back, and they're buying our debt, and as we see that, we need to be concerned about that. It was once thought that the only manufacturing jobs that would be shipped to China would be those that were low in wages. And so what would happen is the furniture industry, the textile industry, and all of those would go to China, and the rest of them wouldn't. What we're seeing now, though, is we're seeing pharmaceutical companies, high-tech companies, R&D companies, everything is being outsourced to China. And so as we start to see from a national security standpoint, we need to be concerned about that, because really what they're doing is it goes over there, they steal our patents, They have mock-up companies, and we get it back in terms of the counterfeit products. And so we need to be vigilant about that. And the second part of that is from an international standpoint in terms of national sovereignty. As we start to continue to give away the decision-making to international bodies, our national security is at risk. You know, when we allow individual bodies, international bodies, to come in and tell us what we can do, which happens on a regular basis here in the United States, and it's administered. You don't see the little white UN buses over here in the United States, so nobody sees it as a threat. But it really gets administered through administrative agencies that we put up. We need to be vigilant about that and say enough. You can finish. Go.
I got a little time left. I just want to talk about China a little bit. I've got experience in China. I've been there. I've worked with it. China has got some huge problems. You go to a 4-star hotel over there, $80 a night. Every faucet, it's got the do not drink the water sign on it. 4- and 5-star hotels, you cannot drink the water out of the hotel. Now, they can produce fresh water, but they can't get it there, which means their underground system is totally polluted, all the land. Also, they have got one-child families now. They're all men. What do you think is going to happen when they come of age? What do you think is going to happen with a nation with one-child families? One special. They have got huge problems coming at us over there. Yes, they're eating our lunch right now on certain manufacturing areas, but they're going to go down, and it's going to probably happen in the next 10 to 15 years. So I don't have near the concern about China. We've got to watch them. We've got to make sure they're in their place, but we have got so much more going here for us than they'll ever have in China.
Okay, last question, and I'm going to open it up to the audience. How can we expect you to vote on the use of force in dealing with foreign nations?
You know, when we have, anytime that we put men and women in harm's way, it needs to make sure that it's not a political decision. And too many times we look at it as a political decision, or, you know, quote, as nation building, or sometimes in the interest of democracy that we think that we're doing the best thing. The truth of the matter is setting up a democracy in countries where their worldview is not one that will embrace that. You know, we talked about the Islamic nations. You know, most of them are not free nations. You know, when you really look at it, you look at the Middle East. You know, Israel is the only democratic nation in the Middle East, and so we've got a concern there. So anytime that we put men and women in harm's way, we need to make sure that it is for our national interests in terms of our sovereignty. We need to do it in a cautious way. And quite frankly, we need to, I read something today, the first oil well that got tapped was by China in Iraq. It happened last year. They got a 23-year lease. So here we pay all this money to liberate them, and yet China is reaping the benefits with a 23-year lease on their oil. I find that just hard to believe. So we need to have a definitive plan, truly one that is in our national interest, and be cautious anytime that we put men and women in harm's way.
China has no oil. That's why they've got to get out there and get it, and we should be very vigilant about that. We need to do the same. So I agree with Mark on that. At our Burke County GOP meeting, one of the questions asked is about Afghanistan, should the troops come home? And I knew the answer, that based on what the establishment wanted, the status quo answer. But then an older couple talked about how their grandson, with less than a year's training, was sent over there and killed almost immediately. And they didn't understand why. It made me really search and figure out what is wrong here. What is the bottom line on this? Because that's what we do in business. We look for the answer, we go to the bottom line, and then we try to figure out how to get there when we've got that answer. The bottom line answer on our military involvement is that we should never sacrifice an American military life for a dysfunctional, corrupt culture. And Afghanistan is a dysfunctional, corrupt culture. And our troops should come home. Now, how we get them home and how we transition into that needs to be determined. But that is the bottom line answer. And that should go forward in committing to other countries. I don't believe we should ever send our troops in again unless it's committed to war. We haven't had a declaration of war since World War II. And look how many lives have been lost. We need to either have the commitment or not go. And certainly not go for nation building. Now, the way to keep people honest in government, and this is very dramatic, and what you get from somebody like me that thinks outside the box and gets creative, to reinstitute the draft. A draft with no exemptions, except for age and physical ability. That means the people voting for war would be eligible. Their parents might be, their children, their spouse. And that would keep them very honest on whether they commit to go to another nation. And once that war is finished, the troops need to come home.
Thank you so much. That was great. I'd like to open it up to the audience. We can take some questions. So if you have questions, raise your hand. And Fremont.
My question is to Vance on the fair tax. A lot of things, one of the things that's not brought up about fair tax is there's no ceiling to the tax, to my understanding. And for example, if you want to sell a new house that you want to get $250,000 out of, you have to get $325,000 for that house. That means that you got $75,000 of a tax that no bank is going to finance, for one thing. You're going to depress the market on high dollar items. And this is the reason I'm against fair tax. If they're going to use it, then they need to put a ceiling on the dollar amount that the tax applies to. Otherwise, it's going to destroy the market for everything that's over a certain dollar amount at high dollar items. It's going to hurt the housing market, it's going to hurt the boat market, it's going to hurt the plane market. Those are just things that are high dollar. Offhand, it'll hurt cars. It's not a good way to go.
I understand what you're saying. In my proposal, we would not tax food, clothing, and shelter, the basics. So the housing would be out. As far as, you have to realize there are so many taxes in there already in producing a boat or a car, and all those taxes would disappear. And it would be balanced out by the consumption tax.
That's the theory brought on by economists who I have questions about their ability on whether they learn their economics out of a book taught by a professor who learned his economics out of a book and not in real life.
You know, I didn't read the book. I don't know who you're talking about. It was just from a business standpoint. I know how many taxes are in products as they go through the process. And that's why I put that out there. The other part, I would do no prebates in
That's the other problem.
yeah, that the poor can't afford to pay taxes, the consumption tax. I would do no prebates though. If they need the help, they need to go to welfare and get that money to help them. That's what it is, and that's what welfare is for, is to help people that need it. We need to keep all forms of social engineering out of our tax system, because that's why it's 70,000 pages long. When you start making exceptions and do this and that, and it's fair, and it's not fair. Well, if you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. And you're right back in the mess we've got right now. It has got to be simplified.
I have one follow-up question, if I may. I wrote a 5% flat tax plan, which eliminates all those taxes at the fair tax supposedly does. And it also limits the government, limits the income to the government, and makes it very simple for people, and it taxes them starting at $1 to whatever amount they make. In my opinion, that's a better tax. How do you both feel about a 5% flat tax?
One of the principles of solving problems in business is to realize there's more than one right answer. There's always more than one right answer. It is important to get all the right answers out on the table, select the best one, and then move. And that's what we do in business. And that's not what's happening in Washington. I wouldn't be against that. If it looked right on the table, we'd talk about it, and then we'd vote on it, and then move. You know, this flat tax at 20%, it's got exemptions in there. And once you put the exemptions in, you're socially engineering again. You're opening that door, and maybe you won't add things to it, but the next congressman will. So in business, you need to get all the right answers out there, pick the best right answer, and then move.
Anyone else?
You know, I'll answer, even though I might not want to answer. No, I'll answer. I'd love to see your plan actually in doing that. One of the things that the flat tax gets a hit on typically is that one, it's a regressive tax. The other is that it's a value-added tax, a hidden value-added tax. And so as you see those two things coming up with something that works there. But here's what I like: doing away with the IRS, making sure everybody has some skin in the game. You know, at this point, it's real easy to vote on tax increases, you know, because half of the people in this country are not paying any taxes. You know, so why not vote for tax increases? You know, and if you took it and you doubled up the tax that, you know, the highest, you know, if you took 100% of what they're doing, we still wouldn't balance our budget. So it's not a tax issue that we've got. We've got a spending problem. Ronald Reagan said that originally, you know, when the deficit was at $3 trillion when he left office. It was $1 trillion when he came in, $3 trillion when he left. And he says, we don't have a taxing problem, we have a spending problem. The other thing is Steve Forbes put in is with a flat tax, you know, the Perry plan was different, and it had its inherent problem.
There has been no true flat tax plan.
It's exactly. And so as we start to see that, if you have an alternative where you say, okay, you've got this flat tax, or you can stay under the existing system, you know, the problem with that is that, again, it becomes regressive, you know, and ultimately, here's the thing: is we must simplify the tax code. We have got to do it. It's time that we quit kicking the can down the road. The reason we have to do it is because embedded in it is two things. One is special privileges, and it creates that, but it also is control of Congress. When you start eliminating the ability to pass a particular set of tax codes which will benefit the others, the lobbyists lose their power, because all of a sudden what happens is it's no financial benefit for me to pass it. You know, so the realtors don't come wanting a bigger deduction on houses. You know, it really starts to limit the control in Congress, and so I think the simpler and the flatter we can get it, the better off we will be.
If you want to see it, go to FremontSthoughts.com.
Fremont's what?
FremontSthoughts.com.
FremontThoughts.com. All right, will do.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. Jerry.
Going back to this earlier question about the debt, the $120 trillion and all, and I saw maybe for the first time the other day, some of the economists are starting to realize that the debt this year is not, the deficit is not $1.2 trillion, it's $3 to $4 trillion per year. Right. It's far and away more than, well, it's twice our. And so what are we going to do about that? I mean, that is a freight train that is coming at us, and there's, you know, it would take you, if you took the whole government revenues for the next 50 or 60 years, you couldn't pay that.
The way to stop that is to quit raising the debt ceiling. If there's no money, you can't pay. And that causes a crisis. It does. And that's why I say, let's have it now. Because it's not going to get better. Nobody's learning. They're talking about it. You know, they're beating the air with words and not doing what needs to be done. You know, in a lighter note, sometimes we get a question about Sarbanes-Oxley, you know, which is where the executives are held accountable for the numbers that are produced. I think Congress ought to be on Sarbanes-Oxley. And if they put out numbers as they have been and they're wrong, they ought to go to jail.
Jerry, but looking at that, and part of that, you're right, is truly the deficit is large. We've got, you know, a gross national product of about $15 trillion a year is our GDP. And so as we start to grow that, if we can grow our economy, what happens, we've got a group of financial folks that are looking at just this particular problem, because it's twofold. One is making real reform across the board. If we cut off all spending, other than just our entitlement, we still wouldn't balance the budget. So I mean, you know, when you really look at it, we could cut out our defense and everything else, and we still wouldn't balance the budget because of the interest on our debt and our obligations both in Medicare and Medicaid. So what we've got to do is start to look at becoming a nation that truly has a GDP that goes through the roof, because you know tax revenues are really a direct reflection of our GDP. So how do we do that? We become an exporter in energy. We've got 90% of what we've done is our natural, our natural resources have been put off limits. We have 300-year supply of natural gas. We have a 200-year supply of crude oil. And yet what we've done is we've said we're not going to do it. You know, we're a net exporter of gasoline for the first time. You know, what I say is let's become the Saudi Arabia of the world. You know, they're not running into a problem right now. You know, they're building airports and tearing them down. They're doing temporary stuff, and what we need to do is everything that you have has petroleum as part of it. You know, everything. I mean, there's not a single thing that we do. So we must do that. And if we start to do that, what we'll see is the GDP rise. We make real cuts and significant cuts. And yes, not keep raising the debt ceiling limit. But in doing that, what ultimately will happen is that we will start. It's a Leffler curve. You start to see that the amount of income coming in will start to make a significant difference, and at least we'll have some numbers to start to work with. Right now, even the most creative people can't balance it.
Well, you have to have something that creates wealth. So much of the stuff we do, we're selling services to each other.
Right.
It doesn't create wealth. You have to do something like you talk about. I came from chem biz, so I'm very familiar with all that sort of thing. But so you have to do something that creates wealth. And of course, oil, gas, and those things, those are wealth creators. But they also bring with them a lot of problems. I guess just one quick, it's just a philosophical thing, and I go to macroeconomics and microeconomics. The problem
macro is good, micro is not good.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
The problem I see is I don't want the federal government to fund a bike trail in Asheville, and I don't want to pay for a walking trail in Omaha. That's what we've got. I mean, and somehow, unless we emaciate the federal government, we've got to starve it to death to get back to these 3 or 4 fundamentals. That, to me, that is the fundamental. I think these problems can be solved possibly, but they're not being solved the way we're doing. And if you remember back a couple of years ago, Obama came up with this. He wanted to spend $45 trillion over 10 years. That was his, and he was laughed off the stage. I mean, Democrats and Republicans laughed. So Ryan's plan was spend $39 trillion. And I'm like, well, your income is only $2.2 trillion. How does that means you got to have $39 trillion and your income is only going to be $22 trillion. But and he was excoriated for that.
Right.
But it's like these guys don't live in any kind of a real world, apparently.
That's because they've been community organizers all their life, you know, and therein is the problem. Is I'll agree with Vance. We're both small business guys, and we know how to make it work. I can tell you what brings people to buy in a development of mine is where I create the walking paths, where I create the low density, where I create the common areas. And what happens is somebody comes in and says, you know what, this is a great place to live, and so I'll come in and do that. And so you create that from a private sector standpoint. Do we do that with any government subsidies? No. The problem is what they're wanting to do is force their agenda, Jerry. I mean, and what it really gets down to is that if we can use, if we can use your money to create something nice for somebody else, then oh boy, that's fair game. And so most people, do we have to get away from that? Yeah, it gets back to the fact that we can't expect the federal government, or even for that matter, the state governments. If you're going to do it, it really needs to be done at a local level, because you're going to face those people in the grocery store, and that's what it needs to be. And so if you want walking paths, as they do in Asheville, they voted in the group that wanted, if I heard more in Asheville about sidewalks and green space, when everybody was running for office in the city council, I mean, it was all about, you would have thought that they lived without a single sidewalk. But they voted it in, and they're going to have the taxes to go with that, and eventually they pay for it. So on a local level, that's fine. On a federal or state level, it's not.
There's nobody
Nancy.
in Washington that has any ideas of how to fix this. They
I have a-
just don't. And you've got to replace the people up there with people that are creative, that are entrepreneurial, that have got the experience, done economic turnarounds, raised a family, not lived in the bubble all their lives, or for the last 15 years.
I will tell you this, because we've looked at a lot of bills, the I-Caucus Oppositional Research Team has when we do interviews. And there are bills with embedded stuff in the middle of these montuous 2,000-page things with regulations. And I am not a lawyer, but I have gone through them and I have picked out stuff that is just horrendous, that some of our supposedly quote-unquote conservative people up there are voting for. And that's part of the problem. You know, we want to know we have candidates that can go through these bills and recognize sustainable growth and development is exactly what you're talking about, and say no to the bill. We want it, it's got to be defunded. And the House of Representatives is where they hold the purse strings and not give up your power to some super committee. You know, that's another part of the problem. Nancy, you had a question.
Yeah, and I've got a question for Vance. This is on Islamic extremism, speaking of embedded. The question was raised a while back about the infiltration of radical Islamists within the White House administration, and your response was along. Sorry. My question, can you hear me? Question is on Islamic extremism, and a while back a question was raised about infiltration of radical Islamists within the White House, and the response was along the lines of that's conspiracy talk. And Obama just gave $1.5 billion to the Muslim Brotherhood, so I just want your feedback. Has your perspective changed at all? I think I gave you a website to take a look at.
The best thing you can do to handle something like this is expose it and make people know about it. You know, it's wrong, we shouldn't do it, but somebody's got to be pressured to step up and say, no, don't do that. But if people don't know about it, and that's why it's important to have a website like you sent me to realize that this is out there and that's what's going on. You know, one of the biggest deflections is to say, well, that's conspiracy talk. Well, you know, when did the truth become conspiracy? You've got to expose it, show the truth, get people aware of it, and then people step up and do something about it. So, does that answer help?
Okay, anyone else, or we will wrap it up? Fremont, a question.
So
One
we
of
need
the
to go to
things we plans-
fremontthought.com, right?
This one's not on there yet, but one of the things that I heard when I was campaigning was the disgruntled feelings about getting our tax money back with strings attached to it from the federal government. And one of the things that I would like to see is somebody jump in there with the guts to go against the standard, the old guard up there, to present a bill that would say that each state gets whatever percent is decided upon, say 50% of the income tax that comes out of that state, back to the state without any strings attached to it for them to use it as they see fit, instead of getting the money back with strings attached to it, like we're getting now.
You know, unfunded mandates and, quite frankly, funded mandates are two huge problems. One of the answers to Medicaid, I believe, is to do a block grant and say, okay, here's the money. You know, we've got tough economic times right now. Here's the money that you got. You administer it, because really what we've got right now is the money comes in, and they get a rider on top of that. So what happens is the money comes in, well, there's overhead associated with that. Well, that makes the cost go up, which means that they'll get more money to come back in terms of funding. And yet what we're seeing on a regular basis is not only with Medicaid, it is all about control of states. It's the money controls the states. And I'll give you a real life example that happened during this campaign. Personal care services, which is actually something that's supposed to be implemented in terms of long-term care. It's a Medicaid.
Have committed to giving back our entire congressional salary to charities in Western North Carolina. That's $174,500 a year. that is ours out of pocket to give to the charities. In addition, I'm challenging the business leaders and businesses in our communities to match that fund to help with job growth and employee training. That means my one congressional seat can contribute as much as $700,000 to Western North Carolina over the next 2 years. This is walking the walk and not just beating the air with words. The election is huge. I need your support. I need your vote so I can get beyond the politics and go to work for my family, for your family, and for our future generations. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having my family and I here tonight. It's been good questions, great forum. Obviously, as we start to look forward to July 17th, what I would ask you to do is to get out and get out and vote. Sadly, there's going to be, probably less than 20,000 people that will vote in this runoff election, and that's compared to 93,000 that voted originally. But for far too long, Congress has been on a binge of taxing and, unsustainable expenditures. And as we start to look at that, we've got to rein that in. We've got to say enough is enough. And yet what we've found is there are not principled people to do that. There are not principled people who will say, we have done wrong for our families and for those future generations. We've traded away the freedoms. We were a nation. In the early, they said there was no way that a small little colony could go up against the greatest nation in the world and actually be sustained, and yet we did. In the 1880s, they said, the Union is no more. There's no way that we'll ever survive this, and yet a new birth of freedom happened in the 1880s. Then in 1980, it said our best years were behind us and everything was over with. That what we've done is America as we know it is gone. And yet what happened is that freedom-loving people stood up and took back our country. The time is now for us at a grassroots level to make sure that we take back our country, that we cut spending, that we really make real changes in terms of tax policy, that we truly come back and get government off the backs of small businesses where they can create jobs. And when they create jobs, we will prosper again. And you know what? We will look back on these days as a great challenge, but one that we rose to the occasion. And I look forward to your support. I ask for it. I ask for your vote. And I thank you so much for having us here tonight.
Thank you.
I won't use the mic, I'll just talk a little louder. Good evening, I'm Ken Gardner. I'm the other candidate that's running for Secretary of State, and I'm glad to be here. For those that were here last week, I spoke, and I won't repeat myself. I told you about 3 careers that I've been nationally recognized for, one with the Department of Defense, one as an architect, and one as a National Urban Elected Official of the Year as a County Commissioner. But it's interesting that the closing statements were about the 2 major wars we had as a country. And my ancestors fought for the idea of the American Revolution, and they died for that idea. And in the Civil War, I had ancestors on both sides of that issue, fighting and dying for what they believed in as our country. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit more about the last 20 years and my fight that I have been taking on as in North Carolina. For 30 years I've been building businesses in North Carolina, but for the last 20 years I've actually stood up for North Carolina rights, our rights to own property. I fought against forced annexation 20 years ago in my community in Wake County, and it was when towns were annexing and throwing us into ETJs because they were trying to balance their budget. And they were balancing that budget by ETJs so that they could tax people without providing them services and a vote or a voice. And that's what really got me involved in why I ran for county commissioner. And it was because that's where the fight for personal property rights occurs, is at the county level. And it's where it is defended. As a county commissioner, I use that platform. And I said, I'm going to seek out every opportunity to get on boards and commissions that talk about those issues. Because if you don't have a seat at those boards and commissions where they talk about these things, then you don't have a voice and you don't have a vote. And so when I got there, I also had the authority to bring some other people along, like our representative Skip Stam, and the two of us were able to fight back some of these idiotic concepts like a rain tax, which was popping up on a couple of these things. And at the national level, I saw a seat open up on the Energy Land Use Committee, and I went for it, because that's where you debate the national issues on personal property rights. It's where you fight Agenda 21. It's where you fight against human climate change and some of these idiotic philosophies of government applying regulations such as the navigable waters of the United States being applied to a person's gutter on his house in Colorado. It's where you fight the fight. So in all of the times that I've run for county commissioner, I have been endorsed by the Home Builders Association and the realtors every single time, full support. In 2008, I wasn't reelected. Obama targeted me and a few others and got rid of me. As soon as I was gone, there was a Democratic swing on the board. And with that swing, the first thing they did was establish a sustainability task force. And that's where they took up Agenda 21. Surprisingly enough, I was not asked to be on that task force. So for 20 years, I've been engaged in these issues. Now I know my opponent has come out and he's been videotaped recently getting into the fight. Glad to have him there. But it's a fundamental difference between the two of us. And that is that I take the fight to where the fight is. And if you want someone like that, I ask for your support. Last week was a neat week for me because I was endorsed by Michael Beitler, who was our candidate, your candidate, the Tea Party candidate. And after his looking at both of us, he saw where my background, my business, my skills, and my fighting the good fight was something that he felt more in common with, and so he has endorsed me. So that's a great endorsement. Glad to have it, along with Dr. Dan up in the mountains. When I say that Agenda 21 and sustainability in Wake County, and I'm going to close with this just so I don't go too much longer, but the Democrats said this is a conspiracy theory. Wake County sustainability is not being influenced by the UN, Agenda 21, or anything else. So, just to prove that they were correct, I have the cover of the Wake County Sustainability Task Force, which I've copied it for those that can see it. And on the other side is a UN logo for Agenda 21. There's absolutely no similarity between those two. Jane, you see that? I mean, there's absolutely nothing there. So, in any event, you have to have a seat at the table. You, just like these gentlemen, they can go to one of those, hopefully will go to Congress, and will sit and hold a seat for us so that we will have a vote. They can't change it by themselves. There needs to be more people and more seats. But you have to be there to defend our rights and what we stand for. So again, I'm Ken Gardner. If you're looking for a fighter, someone who has been in North Carolina the last 30 years, fighting the good fight, I ask for your support. And thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, and please, please, please go up and look at listen to his interview, listen to Ed's. We need you to do that. It's open until midnight Wednesday, and then there will be a vote. But if you don't go up and do that, then you will not have a voice at the table, and we're trying very hard. We've worked really hard to bring this to you. All right, and we are talking across North Carolina. We're not just talking District 11, all right? So please do that.
Thank you again. Thank you.
I'm so glad you came. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Okay, any questions? Thank you so much. If I think Mark is still here. Okay, all right. If you want to stay and ask some questions, that's fine. We have David King, who just won the commissioner's primary. He got through the primary. We have R.L. Clark, who is running for Senate 49, who is with us. We also got him through the primary with 82% of the vote. We hope to get him to Raleigh. They all are endorsed candidates here, so if you want to stick around and ask them some questions, by all means, please do so. Thank you. Have a good night.